So this is my cheap Tasco camera. I know there's a lot of guys running these cameras because they're inexpensive at Walmart, and they actually do a pretty good job of taking pictures, and they're readily available. But what happens with the older models, not the brand new one, I'll show you that in a minute, like 20% of them that I get, this thing will break off after a year or two. This is what retains this battery pack into the camera. See, it's not holding in there. Generally that would clip in, and then you'd have to hit this release to get it to come out. Well, the camera's useless if that battery pack won't go in there, but there is a workaround, and it's fairly simple to do. But there's a plastic piece, tiny little plastic piece, and a tiny little spring in there, and you can't really reinstall that thing after it comes out. Odds are you've lost it in the grass anyway, and you'll never find those two little pieces. And I imagine there's some plastic part that's broken. I've never tried to reinsert the parts that fall out of this, but the workaround is simple. In the bottom of that camera is a 1/4 thread. That's your thread size there, 1/4. And this is made for people that mount this thing like on a stand or whatever, a tripod, doesn't matter. But most people end up mounting these things to trees. So if you don't need to use this piece, you can retain your battery pack with that. So you can get some all thread, something like this. This one happens to be the wrong thread size, but you can buy all thread and cut off whatever you need with your death wheel. This guy, that guy there. Or find you a bolt that's 1/4 with enough thread on it, and then cut the head off of it. The thing is, when you cut that, if you've never had to cut your own length of a bolt before or cut all thread, you're going to want it. The easy way is to thread a nut on there first. In this case, you wouldn't have to do that, but anyway, you thread that on there. Like, let's say we were trying to cut this thing short. If we were cutting off this end, you thread your nut on there, and then when you take your nut off after you've cut it, it will realign those threads at the end that kind of get damaged as you cut it. This one, we're going to be cutting that head off so we can rethread the nut this direction, or you can run a die over the top and rethread it that way. Shouldn't really be necessary. Or what I usually like to do is take it to the grinder. I'll put this thing in a drill after I cut it with the bad threads exposed, and then I'll go over the grinding wheel and cut a taper on it, and then hit it with a wire wheel, and then the threads have always been perfect when I've done that, but isn't really necessary for this job. I'm just telling you for your own reference. So we're going to cut this with the die grinder, and I'll be right back with you. All right, so we're back. I called it a die grinder before. It's an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel on it. So now we'll run this nut down to clean those threads up, and actually the bad end will end up threading into the camera itself, and those bad threads actually will help it retain it a little bit for us. We'll run that through here real quick. Actually, those threads were pretty good. Wasn't much resistance. And so we'll thread that into the bottom here. And then you could put a nut on it, but I don't want to have to take a pair of pliers with me everywhere I go. I usually happen to have pliers, but anyway, most people don't, and I don't want to rely on them. So rather than just putting a 1/4 nut on the bottom here, we're going to put wing nuts on it. So we'll put this battery pack in, and then a big washer on it so it will actually catch the battery box, and then we thread our wing nut on. And you just have to undo that wing nut every time you go and change batteries on your camera. I suppose though, these batteries, they generally last you know, 9 months to a year if you get good batteries. So you could just put a nut on there, and at the end of the season, pull your camera and take it off. Whether you have those pliers with you or not, doesn't matter in that case. But this makes it easy to do this in the field. Now that thing will work again. Hope this was helpful for you. Save your cameras rather than just tossing them in the garbage. And good luck this deer season. Sorry, I forgot to show you the new one. The new cameras, just bought it. This is October of 22. They've updated these. Here, I can't do this with one. I can't pull that out hardly with one hand. But you can see they changed the tab. I'm assuming because they knew this was a problem and updated it. So hopefully this one will last a little longer, not break on a guy. But I know there's a lot of guys still running these older ones. So there you go.